Beautiful people, if you're new to my channel, welcome, and subscribe to my channel. If you're a regular, please stay, comment, like, subscribe, tell your friends, tell your families, tell everyone, and subscribe to my channel. Okay, so let's get started with today's episode. We left off on episode 7, and this is episode 7. We found out about Fred and Lisa. Now, Fred has entered the ballot, and he's entered the race with Phil, Uncle Phil, and he's letting Lisa know about his race and how important it is for him to win. So he's talking to him in the car, and we also see a scene where Will is also getting the same talk that Lisa is. They're basically being told they're not supposed to share any pertinent details about each other that they can use against them in the debate or the race. So Will and Lisa decide they're going to have their relationship. So Will is feeling conflicted because he's supposed to tell Carlton about the relationship that he has with Lisa, and that is a promise that he made to Lisa that he would tell her. So in this episode, Carlton is dealing with a lot. He has to deal with the fact that he's trying to like Will, because he realizes Will is trying, and he is going to stay. So he's trying to come to some type of truce, but he's also dealing with a lot on the team. He plays lacrosse, so he has him and his buddies, him and Connor. They're playing lacrosse, and Connor sees that he's dealing with a lot, but he doesn't particularly care that he's dealing with a lot, because he says some snide comment that gets under Carlton's skin. And Carlton says something along the lines of, if I wasn't here, this game would, you guys would not be able to win without me. And Connor says something along the lines of, it doesn't matter if you were here, and I would have won regardless of we winning. We were only here because we had to fill it. Carlton feels some type of way towards that. He realizes that Will was telling the truth, that Connor doesn't see him more than just a token. He sees him, he just sees him as a token. He doesn't see him as a friend at all. So what he does is that while he's on the team, he lashes out, and he's at practice. He lashes out at practice, and he breaks Connor's arm or leg. I'm not sure if it's arm or leg, but he breaks one of Connor's bones that he needs to play, and he can't play anymore. So Connor is upset, and Carlton runs off the field, and then we find out later that Carlton has been exiled from the entire school because Connor has basically badmouthed him to everyone. Will convinces Carlton to throw this big party, and in the midst of throwing this big party, what he does is he asks his Aunt Viv for permission to throw the party. Aunt Viv gives him permission to throw the party, and Aunt Viv is like, yeah, you can have the party as long as it's a small party and it's not too many people. My house doesn't get messed up or anything like that, because Aunt Viv actually was supposed to be it's supposed to actually go away for the weekend, and Uncle Phil was supposed to stay and supervise the party. But what ended up happening is that when Aunt Viv went away for the weekend, she went away for some art convention, I believe, for the weekend. And Uncle Phil finds out that Reed is going to be at the art convention because he has Jeffrey look into Reed. And Jeffrey finds out that Reed is like a womanizer. Like, this is his thing. Like, he messes up relationships. We know he messes up relationships. Like, we know his history as like an actor. We know his history. But like, he's coming in as that overall. Like, that's his thing. Like, he messes up relationships for a living. Like, he's not just an art promoter or a recruiter. He messes up the relationships that he does. Like, he sleeps with these women. So Jeffrey tells that to Uncle Phil, and Uncle Phil is worried a little bit. I'm like, you don't trust Aunt Viv? Like, she seemed like she loved you. Like, if I had to choose between Uncle Phil and Michael Ely, I would choose Uncle Phil in a heartbeat, because his character, even like even the original Uncle Phil, I still would choose him because he's reliable. Like his personality is reliable. Like Reed is just a good time, and a good time ain't worth no long time situation. So I wouldn't risk my whole life for Reed. Maybe just maybe, depending on the situation. But when it comes down to it, if I was in her shoes, being as married as long as I was to Uncle Phil, I would choose Uncle Phil in a heartbeat. I wouldn't even give it a second thought. So with that being said, Uncle Phil feels like she gon' just like defy his trust a little bit, betray him a little bit. But honestly, that doesn't happen. He follows her to the art convention, and he shows up to some like lunch that she's having with Reed. I don't know why she was having this lunch with him. It just looks very suspect, but she was having this lunch with him, and they're talking, and then Uncle Phil shows up and he's like staking his claim, and Reed is trying to come off as like, you know, this is just a simple dinner, like lunch, like this is just a simple business lunch, there's nothing going on here. But you can see in his eyes that he is lusting after his wife, so that's nothing for him to not be worried about. So he doesn't feel so bad for coming and rushing down there to get her. So when we get back to the room, the hotel room that she has rented for this weekend stay, she tells him like, you know, I know you came down here to protect me and all, but you didn't have to. Like it seems like you don't trust me. Like I know what Reed's after, and I'm not trying to give that to him. I'm just using him for his clout. Like I only need him to help me with this fellowship, and he has good connections, so there's no need for you to be here. He's like, that's not why I'm here. That's not why I'm here. I see that you really want to give this a chance, and I want to support you like you support me, so that's why I came. And Vivian's like, okay, whatever. If that's what you're gonna say, that's your story and you're sticking to it, then okay, I'm glad you're here. So then we get to Uncle Phil. So Uncle Phil is down there. So when he's down there, the kids are still having this party. So they're having the party unsupervised, and the party seems to be going well. Carlton seems to be making friends. And the party seems to be going well. Carlton seems to be making friends. And then what ends up happening is that Lisa and Will go off on their own, and they go back in I think it's Will's room, and they start to talk. And what ends up happening is that Lisa gives Will the opportunity to tell her exactly why he's here, like why he's in LA. And Will does take a little bit of that opportunity and does tell her a little bit of why he's there, but he says he's there for a better education, and he just wanted to come down and visit his family. And Lisa takes that into consideration, and she believes it, of course, because she has no other reason why not to. She has no other reason not to believe it, but she does believe it. And then what ends up happening is Lisa and Will, they have this wonderful time together in this room. And then downstairs is like a big commotion, and we hear that the cops are outside. It's like this, the sirens are blaring and everything. So they come downstairs. Lisa's coming out of the room, and Carlton sees her coming out of the room. Now this is how Carlton finds out that they are dating. He didn't know beforehand, so this is how he finds out. Now you can imagine how the look on his face was just like, but he didn't react at that moment, but you can tell it from his facial expressions that he was very upset that they felt like they needed to hide that from him. Like I don't think he was upset per se about how she chose him over Carlton. I think he was just more upset the fact that she didn't feel comfortable telling him about that new relationship, when in reality she wanted to tell him, but it was just never the right time. And when they finally get downstairs and the cops realize that this is a party that just has children there, there's no adults there, there's no supervision whatsoever, the cops say they're going to arrest Will and Carlton because they don't believe that this is their house. and it goes down to racial profiling again with the cops, and they touch on that a little bit. And the only reason why they don't get arrested is because one of the cops recognizes that that's Fred's daughter, who's also like, he's a police officer as well. So they realize that that's his daughter, so they don't arrest them on that account. They give them a warning, and they let them know you still have to shut down the party, but no one's getting arrested, so just let's call your parents and stuff like that. So he calls the parents, and they call the parents, and the parents know, and they get upset a little bit. Like, they get upset. They're not too upset. They're glad that they're all right. And it does like kind of hurt Uncle Phil's like ranking is in the race a little bit, so he loses a couple more sponsors. Like, he didn't already have that much to begin with, but he lost more sponsors where they have to kind of dig in a little bit more into their account to make sure that they're okay. So, and it was not pretty high. Episode 8. It wasn't much that happened in episode 7, so we're going to go into episode 8. If I missed anything, you can let me know down in the comments. And if I missed anything, that means you can watch it and see your own opinion and see if, let you know I didn't tell you too much to ruin it for you. But, link it down in the comments if I missed anything. And I'm going to go to episode 8. So episode 8, Aunt Viv, it is Will's birthday. So because it is Will's birthday, Aunt Viv flies out Aunt Vi for his birthday, and they have like this big celebration planned for him back at the house, and it's going to be a really good experience for him. So during this time that Aunt Vi has visited him, she's saying all these things. I think Will is actually turning 18 or 17. I could be wrong. I have to look at it again. But I think he is actually turning 18 because they do talk about a lot of milestones. Because Aunt Vi starts to mention, oh, you're starting to look like him being Will's biological father. You're starting to look like him. And Will starts to ask questions about him, like, what does he look like? What do you remember about him? Because Will's father left him at the age of 4, and if you remember in the original, that was the same story. Will's father left him at the age of 5 or 4. So it was the same story. Everything's kind of adding up, and it's kind of reminiscing of in that sense. So we get to that part, and he's like asking about him, and she's telling him about certain things, and she doesn't want to really talk about it too much. It's kind of still you can tell it's kind of still hard for her to talk about. So when we get to her and Aunt Viv, they're talking, and she says something along the lines of, I think it's time to tell Will about what really happened. And now that gets me thinking, when the whole show, they're kind of alluding to the fact that they're hiding some type of secret from Will about his father the whole season, and I'm just like, what are they hiding? Like, it got me thinking, like, is it that Uncle Phil is his father, and that's the twist that we're going for? Like, is it Uncle Phil that is his real father, and Aunt Viv is his real mother, and they kind of adopted him, and they gave him to Aunt Vi? Like, what was the situation? Like, what was the big? It was a lot. So when it gets down to, he's trying to figure out who his father is. He talks to Jeffrey. Jeffrey looks into his father. He's already looking into his father because Uncle Phil asked him to make sure that Will does not find out about his father. So he's already doing 2 jobs at once. And he knows that Uncle Phil knows that Will is looking for his father, and he doesn't want him to find out some things about his father and him. So I was trying to figure that out a little bit. My head was starting to just come up with all these ideas, and all these scenarios was running through my head, but it wasn't that. It was the last thing I could ever think of. But when Jeffrey does find the information regarding his father, he gives Will an envelope. Will looks at it, and he decides he doesn't want to look inside the envelope. He decides that he wants to just give it back to Jeffrey and let Jeffrey keep it, because Jeffrey has already read the envelope. He already knows what's inside of it, and he asks Jeffrey, do you think I need to look inside this envelope? He says, it's up to you. It's up to you. Once you open that envelope, it's not only going to change your life, but it's going to change all of our lives. So it's up to you on whether or not you want to do that. Is it worth it? And he's just like, okay, think about it. I'm going to think about it. And he takes the letter and he gives it back to Jeffrey. Now Jeffrey is contemplating a lot of things as well in this episode, because then we learned a little bit more about Jeffrey in this episode. We learned that he actually has a son, and he has a son back in England that he left. And Uncle Phil throws this in his face, saying that, you know, you have a son back in England, you don't know what it feels like for him to feel like this, and at the end of the day, you left your son. Will's father did not have a choice, but he wasn't a better father at all anyway. Like he may have not had a choice, but he wouldn't, Will was better off without him in the end. So Jeffrey's feeling like that's not for you, a decision for you. So when we get down to the party, and they're having the party with Viv. Aunt Viv and Aunt Vi are having the party for him, and they give them these presents. They give him these presents. Aunt Viv gives him some Jordans, and he loves them. Some limited edition Jordans he loves. And then Aunt Vi gives him this pretty picture of him when he was very little, and it was Aunt Vi holding him. Now he's completely confused about who took the picture, so he keeps asking who took the picture, who took the picture. And Aunt Vi was going to tell him exactly who took the picture, because I know who took the picture. Everyone else knows who takes the picture. Like, but Aunt Viv said something. I don't remember what she said exactly, but she said something maybe along the lines of, let's just take a picture. I think she just wanted to change the subject. Like, she just changed the subject regarding, let's take a picture. So Aunt Viv and Aunt Vi end up getting into a little bit of a fight in the middle of this, and Aunt Vi and Viv get into the fight, and so it kind of changes everything, changes perspective. Will is very upset. Carlton goes ahead and talks to Aunt Viv and lets her know that the reason why Aunt Vi may feel this way, that you feel like you don't thank her enough for the stuff that she's done for you. Like, we find out in this episode that Aunt Vi is the reason why Aunt Viv is an artist, because Aunt Vi saw something inside of her and was made sure that she got art supplies for her. She would spend her last on these art supplies. She'd make sure that she went to art school before Uncle Phil intervened. Like, she made sure that she followed her dreams no matter what. And Aunt Vi feels like Aunt Viv never really thanked her for that. She feels like Aunt Viv resented her for staying back, and Aunt Vi feels the same, that Vivian may present her for like leveling up in life. And Aunt Vi is like, Aunt Viv is like, it's the exact opposite. I admire your spirit, and I admire your boldness and your braveness. Like, I admire it all. Like, you are my hero when it comes down to it, and I love you, and I thank you for like putting all of that into me and instilling that. We find out later on that, I believe Aunt Viv says something about it, but Aunt Viv does say, tell Uncle Phil that I think it's time that we need to tell him, because it got too crazy. I think it's time to tell him, because, and Uncle Phil is still like, no, we're not telling him at all. We're not going to tell him. It's not necessary for me to tell him. He doesn't need to know. So he doesn't find out in this episode what happened to his father. He doesn't find out what the details are, because he gave the letter back to Jeffrey. And that's all that happens in episodes 7 and 8. And if you enjoyed this video, please remember to like, share, and comment down below, and subscribe. You guys have a wonderful day. Bye.